Hey everyone, this is Hussein, the head of the customer success team here at Gleap, and we wanted to kind of make this video to really just highlight how you can use workflows, what are maybe some best practices, what are, some of the capabilities and limitations, and as well, really just kind of dive deep into the best way to set some of these up and just some examples of some workflows that we have set up for other customers and for ourselves that really help automate a big part of the processes in Gleap. So I'm right here in Gleap, and just to get started, I selected my project already and I navigated to the workflows section. When you're in the workflows section, you have to keep in mind that there are two sections, and this form section isn't always super visible, but it's always broken down, into workflows and forms. Now, to start off with a very simple example, this is the AI answer workflow that we have set up on our website. And this is generally the flow that you want to have set up when you are kind of having incoming chats through the widget. As you can see, first things first is we have to define some sort of trigger, and then we define the actions in the workflow itself. So if we click on edit trigger, by default, there's already going to be a workflow created in your project called AI answer workflow, and it's going to be pretty much set up already like this. The only difference is you would probably maybe create some new ones or edit the existing one. But as we can see, we have a trigger set of on conversation started. To kind of take a step back, there are two ways workflows could take place in Gleap. They could take place automatically, which is using our predetermined or kind of preset filters or triggers in this case, or you could always manually start a workflow. Manually starting a workflow gives you full control over the workflow, which basically allows you to have a code snippet that you integrate or paste into your own code, and that way you have full control over the workflow in terms of at what point in the customer journey does it start, and generally just having full control over saying only at this specific point in time in the flow that my customers are going through, I want this workflow to take place. But in most cases, you're going to be setting up workflows automatically or having them trigger automatically. So just going through this list and what do each of these triggers actually mean. The first one is no automatic trigger, which is actually going to be used a bit later on and used pretty heavily in terms of setting up what happens when a customer clicks on something through the widget. And we're going to dive a bit deeper into this in just a little bit. On conversation started, which is the most popular and most common, and this is the one that's really going to involve whenever somebody reaches out to you. On ticket created is whenever a ticket is created, and if we do end up selecting this one, we can even select all of the different feedback types that we have available in Gleap. So for example, if you wanted to create some sort of automation, whenever a bug report is created, maybe at that point in time you want that bug report to get assigned to someone in specific, so you would use on ticket created and then select the bug type, for example. Then we have on ticket reopened, and again, this applies for all of the feedback types. So basically whenever any type, depending again on the one that we select here, or a specific type is reopened, which basically means just the ticket going from open to closed or somebody manually changing the ticket from open to closed. On ticket closed, as the name suggests, again, same idea applies where you can select different types. On ticket status update, so if the status of a ticket ever changes, then in that case you would use this trigger. On no customer response, so if an agent sends a message or reaches out to the customer and the customer doesn't have a response back, then we can also set an automatic trigger for this. And in this case, we can select the feedback type and we can also add some sort of time rule as well. On no agent reply, so if an agent doesn't reply in a certain amount of time. On customer comment, so when a customer basically sends a new message or leaves a comment on any of the feedback types. On agent comment, so if an agent or an operator or someone who's actually on the Gleap dashboard leaves a comment for a customer, again, depending on the ticket type, that's when you would use this specific trigger. And AI-based triggers also have a role to play in workflows, but we're going to dive a bit deeper into that later on in the video. So going back to on conversation started, The next thing that is really important when you're building out workflows is selecting the platform where the workflow is going to take place. So as you might already know, the way that customers can send you feedback depends on the channel where Gleap is integrated. So the main channel is obviously the widget. Email is another supported channel. So if anybody sends you an email, that email would automatically be turned into a ticket in Gleap. And once that happens, it would fall under this category. WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, and Slack. And then you can even add or set some sort of audience filter. This audience filter allows you to basically determine if the workflow is going to take place for certain subsets of users or for all of your users or certain subsets with filters. And as we can see here, we already have a very big list of filters pre-made and ready to go. And these are filters or fields that you find on the contact level for being able to really dive deep into just different subsets of users. One really important point that we have to consider here whenever we're building out workflows is the following. You can never have multiple workflows in Gleap with the exact same automatic trigger. Meaning, if we take this workflow as an example, we have on conversation started, the widget selected as the platform, and no audience filters, and we have it kept to all people. So in this case, if I go ahead and I simply save this workflow or keep it as is, and then I create a new workflow, if in that new workflow I select the same exact trigger, the same exact platform, and the same exact audience filters, that new workflow that I created will never ever fire or work. The reason behind that is there is a possibility of some conflicting logic happening when you have multiple workflows active with the exact same automatic trigger. If I set up a new workflow and I deselected widget as the platform and only selected email and kept the audience filter the same, that new workflow would take place with absolutely no hiccups or no issues whatsoever. So it's really important generally when you're building out workflows to always remember that you can never have multiple workflows with the exact same automatic trigger. There needs to be some difference in the trigger, the platform, or the audience for that workflow to take place. Another really important point here is from the pre-made triggers, this will cover maybe almost 80 or 90% of the use cases you could have on Gleap. Meaning, this is how you automate most of the processes that your support staff, your engineers, your product team would actually go through. But again, let's keep this example pretty simple and we'll only have on conversation started as the trigger. We only want this workflow to take place when someone reaches out to us through the Gleap widget, and we don't have any audience filters, or we don't want to apply any audience filters in this case. Once all of that is set, you then move on to building the workflow itself. And we basically call this an execution block. And in an execution block, you have the option of adding multiple steps. When you add a step, it's really important to keep in mind that it actually goes in order of the steps. So first things first, write a message is the first order in the step. It's actually going to write a message first, then collect some sort of data, which is the email address in this case. And then we basically said we're giving the entire conversation to the AI to handle. So this is just a very simple workflow that can be on your marketing website or on your actual platform or your app to simply allow anybody to send in any feedback, even if they're not your customer. So what if someone's on your website just browsing, they're not a customer yet, they haven't created an account, but they do have some questions or they do end up finding some sort of issue. In that case, that would be absolutely fine because this workflow would be shown to everybody because we didn't add any audience filters. And at that point in time, we're also collecting their email address because if they do end up reporting something to us as an issue or having some sort of question, we need something to tie that feedback back to them, even if they're not a customer in Gleap or we're not identifying them as a customer. A lot kind of goes into user identification. So if anybody ever has any questions or you're just feeling that you need some more help there, you could always go to our documentation page and find out everything you need in regards to how to successfully set up user identification. So again, this is just a very simple workflow that we have created. I just want to dive into a completely brand new workflow and build this out from scratch and actually go through all of these steps and what they mean. So first things first, let Kai answer. This is basically giving the entire conversation to our AI bot Kai and allowing Kai to handle that conversation. Give Kai a task is taking that a step further And it's basically allowing the AI to handle specific or complex tasks and not just have a general pool of information that it can pull information from to display it to the customer. There's going to be basically a separate video that's a bit more in depth on the best way to kind of set up Give Kai a task. You'll also find that somewhere in our help center or our documentation as well. Then we have an option of AI ticket tagging. And if I select this and then actually click into it, and that's how most of these steps work, is you would select the step first and then actually click into it. AI-based tagging is very cool because it allows you to basically tell the AI, whenever I have a ticket come in or a live chat or an email, and it includes, this specific topic or these keywords, I want you to tag it with a specific tag. Then we have AI ticket assignment, which is really the exact same thing as ticket tagging. However, we basically tell the AI, hey, if a ticket comes in and the customer is asking about a cancellation or a refund, then always assign it to a specific individual or potentially assign it to an entire team. And that's how you can set up routing of specific issues in workflows. Then we have some customer interaction options. So we can write some sort of message. We can show the expected reply time. We can collect a reply from the customer. We can collect some data and then actually save that data either on the contact level or the ticket level. We can have the customer schedule a meeting and we can show them a CSAT rating. And then we have some more options in terms of ticket management. So we can add a tag to a ticket. We can change its priority. We can assign a ticket to, again, a specific person or a specific team. We can change the status and the type of a ticket. We can set some sort of data attribute, which is also basically adding some sort of field or having a field filled in with information on either the ticket level or the contact level. We can archive the ticket. We can snooze the ticket. We can close the ticket out completely, or we could even create a new ticket entirely. And then we have some workflow and integration options, which are arguably very powerful, but they do need some time to set up. So we can run some sort of custom action. And this is very handy if you ever want to do something that's very custom in terms of actions that take place in the workflow itself. We can run a custom API action. So if we ever need to connect to any sort of external system within a workflow, running a custom API action is the way to do that. And we can also pass workflows back to each other. And this also provides a very robust system where you can create multiple workflows, and depending on how the workflow ends, it could potentially pass it to another workflow. And that way we have a system where we can connect them all together. And then we have some final navigation and form options. So we can have the customer open a link. We can show a form, which we can create in the form section on the dashboard. We can add conditions, which basically allow us to branch off the workflow. And we can add buttons, which also allow us to branch off the workflow. For conditions, we can see that as soon as I select a condition, I have two different options, and I can obviously add multiple conditions as well. But next to each edit condition button, I have an option where I can have it branch out. And here I can actually select the condition. There are a lot of conditions already pre-made, and most of these will also really help you out in terms of making sure the right issues either go to the right people or generally just automating a lot of the processes that happen on Gleap. So we can say that if, for example, during office hours or outside office hours, something is going to take place. If the conversation has at least one customer reply, if there's more than one active conversation, maybe we want to add a condition for tags, and then we have all of the fields that we've seen before on the contact level. So we can say that if, for example, someone's name contains a specific word, basically branch out and then have some new steps take place in the workflow. And this applies, as we can see, to every single one of these. And we just need to move this one so we can actually see the branch. And then potentially, if none of those workflow conditions are met, something else would happen. And this would also branch out into a new flow or a new block. Something that's really important to keep in mind here is when you're selecting some of these steps, for example, let Kai answer, some other steps get grayed out once that happens. The reason behind that is there are sometimes some final ticket actions that take place, such as let Kai answer, give Kai a task, close a ticket, create a ticket, and all of the navigation and form options. All of those automatically get grayed out because they would potentially conflict with the option that you've selected already. So always keep in mind that when you're building out these workflows and you want them to branch out like we've seen, the only way it could really branch out is either through the conditions like we've seen already, or through the buttons. Buttons also allow us to have, multiple different options, and depending on the option the customer actually selects, it would branch out into one of these flows and some new actions would take place. We can see here that I've obviously selected buttons, so I can't select any of the ones that are grayed out, but in this new block, I can. So whenever a new block is created, it basically resets and allows you to add the options that were grayed out previously. So this is just a quick idea of what you can achieve with workflows and really the core of how they work. Generally speaking, workflows are very experimental, meaning that you would be probably spending some time setting up some workflows, testing them out, and then going back and making changes and iterating and improving on them over time. The reason behind that is the workflow editor itself is very easy and allows you to save instantly and also publish workflows. And if you ever need to make changes to a published workflow, it's extremely easy. You can unpublish it and the changes are made instantly. One really important thing here is the no automatic trigger option. This is when you would want to create a workflow to also have full control over it. So an example is whenever you have a workflow with no automatic trigger, you can very easily go into your settings. And then if you go into your widget preview, here you can actually fully preview the widget as if you are a customer. So you can fully test out all of your flows. But to take a quick step back, if you go into this home section and we have, ask a question, report an issue, or the different options customers can interact with the widget, you can actually select a workflow as the action that takes place when the customer clicks on that button. So this is what allows you to have custom buttons, and at the same time, this is what allows you to have your own workflows take place when a customer decides to ask a question, report an issue, request a feature, or any custom button that you've created. You simply will select Start Conversation, and once you select Start Conversation, all of the workflows that you have set live and published will show up in this list, and it'll simply allow you to select it from here. But again, the most important thing for this to actually happen is if it is some sort of custom workflow that's taking place, it needs to have no automatic trigger set, because the trigger is actually what we are setting from this section or this screen. Now going back to the workflows, some final options or something to keep in mind is you can obviously add forms within workflows. So if at any point in time you wanted to have a custom form show up, you would very easily or just simply select the workflow, add a step, and in the workflow you would select show form. And then once you click into show form, you can then actually select what form you want to see at that point in time in that specific execution block. This is just a very basic video of how everything works in the background. There isn't really a right or wrong when it comes to workflows. Like we said, it's very experimental. There's a lot you can play around with, and definitely, a lot of our customers will play around with it until they find the exact workflow that fits with their use case and their needs. But hopefully this should help you just give you an understanding of what could be possible through workflows, how the automatic triggers work, and what you can achieve using some of these workflows. Thank you very much. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via the Gleap widget, and we're more than happy to help. Have a great day. Thank you.